Good day to all of you, and it's so good to be with you once again. Welcome to
Tough Questions,
Real Answers. This is Pastor Robert Lockhart and
Minister Rochelle.
And you can just call me Robert and Rochelle. So good to be with you once again. And so, like I always ask the question, Rochelle, what are we going to be talking about today?
The good life.
The good life. Okay, we'll be talking about the good life. Okay.
You know, John 10:10 says, "The thief comes not but for to kill, to steal, and to destroy. But I have come that you may have life and that you may have it to the full." A lot of people think that the good life, which is the God life, is a boring life. How do we, in a sense, show to the world, especially our young people, that living the God kind of life is not a boring life?
Okay, I think over the history of Christian religion, let me just say that, and Christian tradition, I think sometimes over the centuries, Christianity has been presented in a way where people have just looked at the religious side of it. But God didn't come, and Jesus didn't come to bring us a religion. He came to bring us a way of life, and not just a way of life, to bring us a life itself. And so I think, especially when we look at Proverbs, we sort of see how life ought to be lived in its fullness, but we cannot do that without God's help. And that's why He sent Jesus Christ, so that He can take sin out of our lives. I truly believe that God came to take sin out of our lives so that we can enjoy every other aspect of life as He intended for us to enjoy it.
Okay, so people think, generally speaking, that because you are born again, I won't say Christian because that has a whole new meaning today, but because you are born again and in relationship with Jesus Christ, that your life is boring. Primarily, they list a whole long list of can and cannot do's.
Yeah, because I think many times people that do that are not focusing on a relationship with Jesus Christ. They're focusing on religion. Religion always has to talk a lot about do's and don'ts. But when Jesus came, He came to bring us back in fellowship with the Father, and that's how we have life. And so that's not filled with a lot of do's and don'ts. That's filled with having a relationship with God, and out of that relationship with God, we live our lives.
Okay, so the good life is based on a relationship with God. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, so not being able to do certain things because people feel as if, okay, I can do what I want, have the freedom that I want, drink what I want, party, clubbing, and all of that, and I don't need God, because if I have God in my life, those things I cannot do. Why is it that living the good life somehow people feel like they're restricted from certain activities?
Okay, and I guess those are, and I think that comes from when people begin to, let me talk about it this way. I think those two things are, when you're in relationship with the Lord, the thing that we realize, God takes sin out of our lives, and so we stay away from sinful activities. Okay. But I think what happens sometimes is that we begin to declare every activity sinful. Okay. And that's where we get in problems, where people that are caught up in religion begin to declare activities sinful that God didn't declare sinful, and that we can't get too happy and have too much fun. Because for you to do that, you're going to have to be sinning. And then there are those people who think that the only way you can have fun is to sin. How could you have fun without sinning? But the key is that life is great without sin. And the key is that we can enjoy every good thing that God has given to us without sin. And Jesus came to show us that, because the Bible says that He was tested in every way. He experienced life in every way like a human being, yet without sin. So Jesus came to show us how to live the great life, how to enjoy life, and enjoy all of God's goodness without sin. And of course, sin is in the nature, so He takes that sin away. And when that sin is taken out of us, we no longer, the thing is what people don't realize is, we no longer enjoy the activities of sin, no longer pleasurable to us, but that flow out of our relationship with God and not out of do's and don'ts. Because I think when you're trying to live by rules, that truly is miserable. When you're just trying to live by a lot of rules, that is miserable, because it's not in it, it's not coming out of your nature. And so when you have the righteous nature of God, then sin is not pleasurable. But when you're still in a sinful state and you're trying to stay away from sin, that's miserable, because what happened is you're in a sinful state trying not to sin. And so you're trying to go against a nature that you don't have. And so, but when you have the God nature, because Jesus regenerates us, that's what born again is. He changes us where we take on the nature of Christ, and therefore sin is no longer enjoyable. We enjoy living life righteously and enjoying the things of God and enjoying all the goodness of God separate from. So we can enjoy our money without sin. We can enjoy our wives without sin. We can enjoy sports without sin. We can enjoy music without sin. We can enjoy a recreation without sin. We can enjoy going on a cruise, touring the world, seeing the sights. We can enjoy our cars. We can enjoy our homes. We can enjoy our ambitions, our goals, our business. Whatever it is, we can enjoy it without sin, out of relationship with God, and live a purposeful life. And that's what God called us to do. I think we get into trouble when we start to think that, hey, having a nice car is sin, having a nice house is sin, or wanting to wear nice clothes is sin, or wanting to enjoy good music is sin, or wanting to have fun with my wife is sin. That's when we get in trouble, because those things aren't sin, and we can enjoy all of those things without sin.
Okay, so explain then to our audience, what is the difference between laws and boundaries? Okay, so because Christians live their lives within some boundaries, basically based upon the 10 commandments, and we know Jesus Christ fulfilled all of the commandments by summing it up into one. You should love your neighbor as yourself,
and to love the Lord
thy God with all your heart. Okay, so God's law and boundaries, explain the difference that makes us able to live the abundant life.
Okay, we're able to live the abundant life that Jesus comes and gives to us, and is to live the God kind of life, that kingdom life, what I said, that is free from sin. We're no longer in bondage to sin. We're no longer under the influence of sin and the influence of the kingdom of darkness, but it flows out of our relationship with God. And so the thing is, me and you have a relationship, so we made a decision to get married, and because of our married relationship, we have certain boundaries, but those boundaries exist out of love. You don't have 10 rules on the wall that says, now that you're my husband, number 1, you have to keep. Number 2, we don't have that like that. We live out of relationship, and because I love you and I'm committed to you, I set certain boundaries, because I don't want anything to endanger me and your relationship. So the same thing with God. We're in relationship with God. We know what God is like. We know what He likes. And so we live within that bounds. We live our lives to please and honor God whom we love. And so we put those boundaries in place, that I'm not going to do anything to disturb the relationship that I have with God, and to do anything that's going to harm Him. And God does the same for me. God's not going to do anything to harm me, because we're in relationship with each other. So the key is with law has no relationship. Okay? Laws are just rules that you keep. And as long as you keep them, you don't even have a relationship. That's why we call God our Father. Jesus is our elder brother, because we're in relationship with Him. And the boundaries we put in place, and the boundary God's put in place, is so that we can maintain that relationship. Okay. It's not about works and rules. It's about a relationship. So even when the law existed, it was just a schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. And once we came to Christ, He put it away, because now we've come to Him, and He's given us His Holy Spirit, and we can now come to God and call Him our daddy. And out of that relationship, we put certain boundaries in place, and those boundaries are, I'm not going to do anything to disturb my relationship with God.
Right. Okay, so we could wrap up boundaries when it comes to the marriage relationship like this.
Yes.
Jesus said, if you look at someone that's not your spouse, and if you just look at them with the thought of going to the next step with them, then you have already committed sin in your life. And so the boundary there for a marriage relationship is not to even think about somebody else.
Yeah, and when he was talking about that is, to desire to be with someone else, to wish or imagine that you're with someone else. And what Jesus is saying is that you're committing adultery in your heart. And Jesus was pointing out the fact that every misdeed and every sin begins first in the heart before you actually carry it out. So what Jesus was pointing out is that all sins begin is the sins of the heart that come first. And that if you don't sin in your heart, you'll never sin out, actually. So he was talking about the fact that if you can deal with sin in the heart, then you would avoid actually ever carrying it out, because all sin, adultery, he's saying the root of adultery or sexual sin is lust. The root of murder is hate. And so what he was saying is, if you could deal with lust, then you will never carry out the act of sexual sin if you deal with the root of it, which is lust, which begins in the heart.
Okay.
The heart is the soil of everything. It's like the ground. If you stop the seed from germinating and growing, you'll never have the fruit. Yeah.
Okay, so for our audience then, let's wrap up the good life. What is the good life?
The good life is the God kind of life, is living life as God intended for us to live it and enjoying all of God's goodness and appreciating Him and loving Him for who He is and not doing anything to dishonor God, dishonor ourselves, and harm others.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us on Tough Questions.
Real answers.
It's God's will that you live the good life.
The good life.
The God kind
The
of
God
love.
kind of life, enjoying everything that God has blessed you with. Okay?
See you again soon.
See you again next time as we will be with you again and have an interesting topic on
Tough Questions.
Real Answers.
God bless you.
God bless you.